Hey everybody, welcome to the first bike review of the year for me. So 2018's kind of been a slow start for me, just mixed with weather and injuries, but breaking the ice here with the 2018 Trek Fuel EX, and we're going to just keep them churning. So let's take a look at the bike, and we'll let you know how it rode. So this is the 2018 Trek Fuel EX. In particular, this is the EX8. So what the EX8 will give you is their aluminum frame. So rear triangle rocker, actually the rocker might be magnesium, aluminum front triangle. This is a 29er, so 130 mil travel front and back. You got a lot of wheel space in here for a pretty wide, some of these 2.6, 2.8 tires. And the front, you may be able to squeeze one in there on the Fox Vision 34. So suspension wise, Fox handles the suspension on this guy. So we have the Rhythm 34 fork with the grip damper and the reactive tuned Fox shock on the rear. So this is something that they've worked on with Penske, I believe. They basically have a really high flowing circuitry in there for oil flow. So this rides on Trek's ABP suspension. So basically what that is it's a single pivot. So you have a split pivot rear end here at the axle, and then you have a floating assembly right here. So the bottom eye isn't fixed to any particular part on the frame. It's actually attached to the lower chainstay, whereas the upper is mounted to like a traditional rocker style. So this made for a pretty active suspension system. I was actually pretty surprised. It felt pretty plush, and I would say it kind of felt similar to like an Eagle or like even like the Yeti 4.5 that I rode. So I was pretty impressed with the suspension platform. The rest of the bike, you get a lot of Bontrager parts. So if you don't know, Bontrager is Trek's kind of own branded parts catalog. So you get the Bontrager bars, stem, wheels, tires. Drivetrain is taken care of by GX Eagle by SRAM, so you get that nice 10 to 50 range out back. Their descendant cranks and 32 tooth ring up front. Brakes are handled by SRAM as well. They're the Guide R. So they're the 4-piston caliper, and kind of their basic lever assembly. It doesn't look like you get the bite point contact. You do get reach adjust, and you don't get their smooth seal cartridge bearing lever pivot. And you get the Bontrager dropper post and saddle. Overall, a pretty good spec. I gave it a ride. I was pretty impressed with it. The bars are about 750 millimeters wide, stem is 60 mil long, so that's pretty common for a trail bike. So some pretty cool features about the bike is you have the Minolink, which is a high-low adjustment. So you can adjust the geometry about by half a degree, which also nets you about a 6 to 8 millimeter difference in bottom bracket height, depending on which mode you're in. You get the molded down tube protector, molded chainstay protector, and then another kind of unique feature about this bike is you get Trek's knock block system. So basically what the knock block is it proprietary headset to Trek, which stops the bars from turning too far in one direction. So they have this little bumper up here just in case it turns too far or fails, or if you decide to go with a different stem, because the upper crown steer will hit the down tube if turned too sharp. So they did this because they say they produced a stiffer frame at this junction versus kind of the more traditional setup. But the downside to that was that interference kind of in that area. So I rode the bike. Let's take a look and see what I thought of the climb and the descent and everything in between, and we'll bring it back here to wrap things up.
Yeah, she's yeah. So the bike pedals pretty well. Oh.
You'll have to forgive me on this video. I forgot the holding plate of the gimbal, so it's just mounted to my helmet right now, the GoPro. Apologize for that, but the fuel pedals pretty well. I'm open. I have everything set. 30% sag up front. Fork I have to the recommended PSI setting for my weight. I tend to do that for most of these tests. I'm at my preferred tire PSI settings of 28 rear, 25 front, and overall it climbs pretty well. Bobs a little bit under smooth pedaling. Efficiency, I'd put it in terms of the bikes we've already done, probably between the I'd have to say probably below even the LT and the Yeti, despite those bikes having more travel. It just has a little bit more bob than I would like. Here's a little steep section. We're gonna get out of the saddle a little bit and put some power down. I don't know if you can hear that. Tires are skidding just a hair. Some rocks, just try and roll over everything, but kind of stutters and hooks back up. Overall, I'd say it's a good climber. So probably the first thing that stands out about this bike is how plush it is for 130 mil travel. The rear end feels more bottomless than a lot of trail bikes in this category lend you to believe. It's not the stiffest bike, that's for sure, but pretty nimble. The tires are a little sketchy. These are the XR4 Bond triggers. It is pretty dusty and dry though for these conditions. So out of all the bikes that I've ridden, that I've taken on this trail, this is probably one of the less stable ones I've ridden. It does have narrower bars than I'm used to, and the fork is a little flexy, but the front end definitely wants to pull me in different directions every now and then. It's kind of a faster section. A little blind there with that overgrowth. And we're gonna make a detour here. This is a new section they've added. Takes a little bit of my pedal section out, but makes it more interesting. All right. Here comes the pedal. Not too bad. It's definitely not a sponge, but it's definitely not a rocket either. Because bob down a little bit. One thing I am impressed with though is the suspension is pretty active, despite people calling it a split pivot or a single pivot, or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of the single pivot bikes I've ridden lately, the Yeti and the Evil and the this, they've all been fairly pretty sensitive. So just because it doesn't have a fancy suspension platform, I'd say the performance is really good. Despite how soft the initial bite is, it actually feels fairly bottomless. Whew. Check the ring down there. Yeah, I'm near the end of the ring, but not blowing it off.
Alright, so to kind of summarize my experience today on the trail, I would say it's a good climber, good descender. It's kind of a jack of all trades, doesn't excel really in any particular area. It's a decent climber in the open position, better climber if there's a lockout or a pedal platform in there. Descending wise, I really think the front fork really lets the design of the bike down. Again, they did a lot of engineering and design work in this straight shot down tube for added stiffness, yet it's all kind of left by the wayside because of kind of the flex that the fork produces. So my recommended setup, if you are wanting to just make the fork a little, or the bike a little bit more capable, I would play with the cockpit a little bit, maybe go to a slightly shorter stem, maybe slightly wider bars depending on what your body type is. Just keep in mind though, if you do go to a different stem, you will bypass the knock block capability. And I would definitely go to a stiffer fork. So whether that means going to like a Pike or a 36, you know, some of the DVO stuff out there, I think you would really benefit from a little bit more confident front end. If I was going to spec it my way, a little bit more aggressive riding, I'd probably gamble with the 140 to 150 mil travel bump up front, keeping the bike in the low position, definitely going to wider bars and a slightly shorter stem. The Bontrager, the XR4s weren't too bad. I'd actually probably keep the XR4 as a rear tire. It actually rolled pretty fast and cornered pretty well, but I probably want to look at a little bit more aggressive tire up front. Wheels are fine. I didn't get a chance to really test out the stiffness of them, but they definitely didn't let the bike down. I weighed this bike without pedals and it came at 31.8 pounds. So not bad. This is the 21 or the 19.5-inch size, so roughly about a large. So, you know, for an aluminum bike, you know, 29er, you know, big wheels and tires, that's a pretty good competitive weight for being an alloy bike. And I think Trek has probably one of the cleanest looking alloy frames, especially if you look at like this gusseting right here that's all smooth. All the welds are, you know, pretty smooth. So it's a pretty polished product. From a glance, you'd almost think it was like a carbon fiber or a plastic bike. So all in all, great bike. You can purchase this bike new for about $3,200. You could maybe find a deal on an older model as well, but overall, it was a great bike. I had a lot of fun on it. Yeah, so coming up on the channel this week, we head over to Hood River for our first race. So a few teammates and I were representing the Bike Hub, where we're going to be riding the Post Canyon Trail Network. So if you're out there Friday, Saturday, and you see the green high tower or the dotted jersey, definitely say hi and hit us up. We're going to do a follow-up report on the Cush Core. I got a good weekend on that and got to really play around and experiment, so that's coming as well. And also got a couple products on the way, so we'll be doing some reviews and comparisons on that as well. So until next time, in the comments, you know, let me know. This is a little bit different review format than I did last year. I can really kind of concentrate on the bike and the specs and the parts. a little bit better when I have the bike in front of me and I'm not riding and trying to gasp for air. So if you like this new format, let me know. If you think it needs a little bit of tweaking, let me know as well. Or if you definitely like just the more POV, I ride up, explain the bike riding down, let me know as well. So I'm looking for feedback. I just thought I'd try it this way to get things going for 2018. So until next time, we'll see you guys later.